In a show filled with psychopathic, drug-dealing murderers, the last person you would expect to be the most formidable villain is this guy. Chuck acts as the main source of conflict for the first 4 seasons of Better Call Saul. After several smaller disputes, the relationship between him and his brother, Jimmy, culminates in season 3, where neither take any restraint in their efforts to claim victory over the other. That conflict is settled with neither of them being better off than before. Jimmy isn't permanently disbarred, but is still forced to stop practicing law for a year, and Chuck commits suicide after his brother's intentional sabotage of his reputation causes him to relapse. At the end of season 4, Jimmy is able to successfully scam his way back into the law by using his relationship with Chuck to manipulate the board. While Chuck has been dead for a year, his control over Jimmy has been just as present as before. He's had to work a job that he hates for a year because of Chuck. His first attempt to regain his law license is rejected because he doesn't mention Chuck. But when Jimmy successfully gets back into the law, Chuck's external control over him ends, and minutes later, he starts practicing law under the name Saul Goodman. After this, Chuck is barely mentioned and their conflict is concluded. At the beginning of this episode, where Jimmy regains his law license, titled Winner, we see a flashback of him first becoming a lawyer with Chuck vouching for him. At a celebration afterward, Jimmy gets Chuck to do some karaoke with him. The song that Jimmy picks is ABBA's 1980 single, The Winner Takes It All. The song's lyrics were written by Bjorn Ulvaeus and were likely about a very public divorce he went through where his ex-wife gained full custody of their children. In general terms, it describes a feud where no expenses are held back between two people who had previously valued each other. As the song goes on, it becomes clear that it's about a past romantic relationship. However, in Better Call Saul, this flashback features only the first half of the song, where the specifics of the lyrics match up with the relationship between Chuck and Jimmy perfectly. In this video, I'll be analyzing this scene, going into how it parallels one of the most complex relationships ever shown on television, and looking at what it could possibly mean for Jimmy in the final season of the show.
Okay, I don't want to talk about things we've gone through, though it's hurting me. Now it's history.
While Jimmy wants to forget the past, Chuck defines Jimmy's character by his previous mistakes. When Chuck is trying to convince Kim that Jimmy swapped the address numbers on the Mesa Verde documents, instead of showing evidence, he just brings up that Jimmy made fake IDs in high school. In Chicanery, when Chuck goes on his rant, he starts with Jimmy's most recent crimes, like swapping the address numbers in his billboard publicity stunt, but he quickly goes back to him stealing from their father's store, his unfortunately placed Chicago sunroof, things that are far in Jimmy's past. When Jimmy is serving on the board, giving out scholarships in Chuck's name, he advocates for someone that everyone else has dismissed. She, like Jimmy, made a mistake, faced the consequences, and bettered herself. But everyone else on that board defines her by that mistake, calling her the shoplifter. Similarly, when Jimmy goes to make repentance with his brother over what he did, he's trying to set their complicated past to the side and enjoy the relationship as brothers. Jimmy doesn't want to talk about the past, not only in the context of his feud with Chuck, but in terms of their entire history together.
I played all my cards, and that's what you've done to Chuck McGill, everyone! Let's hear it! What you say? No more ace to play.
Both brothers go all in on their conquest to defeat each other. When Jimmy apologizes to Chuck, he acknowledges that both of them made mistakes, and he's right. Yes, Jimmy embarrasses his brother, damaging his reputation as a lawyer, but Chuck resorts to methods just as unethical and regrettable. He uses his mental illness to lull his brother into a sensitive state. He fires an employee after manipulating him as part of his plan. He goes up against his brother in a system that Chuck holds an extreme advantage in. Chuck distinguishes himself from Jimmy because he follows the rules of the law. But unlike his brother, Chuck belongs in a system of rules where he wins cases by citing obscure case law. While Jimmy flourishes in cutting corners and avoiding the system, Chuck just flourishes in the system. He calls law mankind's greatest achievement because it ensures that everyone's actions have defined consequences. However, Chuck's entire plan in season 3 goes against this. He uses his knowledge of the law to get Jimmy arrested for breaking into his home. Then he uses the crime that he manipulated Jimmy into committing as a bargaining chip to force Jimmy to submit his confession to the state bar, nearly ensuring that he will lose his law license. In season 2, Jimmy offers Chuck the chance to get him out of the law after Kim is sent to doc review. If they stop punishing Kim, Jimmy will quit the law forever. Chuck's attention is grabbed with the thought of Jimmy no longer being a lawyer, but he denies the offer because it's illegal and against his code. Chuck's plan in season 3 is just the Chuck version of that. Rather than extorting him, he's going to legally entrap Jimmy to get what he wants.
The winner takes it all! That's you!
The loser standing
Yes!
strong.
Let's go, let's go! Beside the victory! That's her destiny!
Here, Jimmy sings of the loser's destiny being to stand by the winner. Jimmy is deeply insecure about his relationship with Chuck. When Kim questions Jimmy's choice to change his name to Saul Goodman, he says,
I can't go back to being Jimmy McGill. Jimmy McGill, the lawyer, is always going to be Chuck McGill's loser brother.
Jimmy is constantly portrayed as beneath Chuck, whether it's working under him in the mailroom, being reimbursed from the change jar, being made to apologize to his brother like they're children who got into an argument, or going up against Chuck in a system where everyone thinks of Jimmy as the loser brother. Jimmy wants to overcome this classification of him, which is why he strives for so much success. The show has many examples of Jimmy going to dramatic lengths to be successful, ranging from his billboard stunt when he's trying to build his solo law practice to building a flourishing drop phone business during his year of suspension. By the end of Breaking Bad, he's succeeded in becoming known separately from his brother. In the context of Saul's story, Chuck is the lesser-known brother that we only hear about in the Saul Goodman backstory. Chuck, the loser, now must stand at Jimmy's side, becoming the person known mostly in relation to someone else.
I was in your arms. Yeah.
Thinking I belong there.
I figured it made sense. Building me a fence.
Building me a home.
Thinking I'd be strong there.
This section parallels the already complicated relationship that they have far before the events of Better Call Saul, particularly at the end here. Chuck builds his home only for Jimmy to join his brother without him having to do nearly as much work. For Chuck, success came from graduating early, going to law school, and building one of the largest law firms in the Southwest from the ground up. Jimmy, on the other hand, is able to restart his life in his 30s because of the opportunities that Chuck's success affords him. Jimmy becoming a lawyer offends Chuck not just because of his questionable morals, but because he didn't have to work nearly as hard as he did. This scene itself also reinforces their general dynamic. Jimmy, the more extravagant and uncaring brother, is able to get up on the stage with ease. His singing is messy and out of tune, but it doesn't matter as his charm and passion is able to get the crowd engaged. Chuck, on the other hand, has to be eased into the spotlight. At first, Chuck doesn't want to go up, so Jimmy gets the crowd to cheer for him. Then After having the microphone shoved in his face, he's led up on stage. Chuck's singing directly contrasts Jimmy's, as it's powerful and professional, like a lounge singer. And while Jimmy looks out at the audience, Chuck's eyes are locked on the screen, making sure that he gets the lyrics right. After becoming more comfortable on stage, he grabs the microphone from Jimmy and presents himself as a different kind of performer from his brother. While Jimmy makes grand gestures and plays to the crowd, Chuck moves his hands with elegance and uses vibrato on longer notes. All of this matches their different paths to success. Chuck takes the traditionally professional path, while Jimmy paves his own messier way.
But I was a fool, playing by the rules.
Both of them singing this line again shows that both of them, not just Jimmy, go against their morality to get what they want in their final feud. Chuck, in that he finally manipulates the law for his own selfish benefit, and Jimmy, who weaponizes his brother's illness and death to overcome him.
The gods may throw the dice, their minds as cold as ice, and someone way down here loses someone dear. The winner takes it all.
Interpreting this from the point of view of the songwriter, this section is likely remarking on the distant and indiscriminate forces that decided he didn't maintain custody of his children. The powers that have life-changing effects on people often make their decisions randomly and with little care. This reflects Chuck's understanding of Jimmy as someone who thinks that the ends always justify the means. In Better Call Saul, Jimmy pulls incredibly complex and often regretful scams to get what he wants. When he airs the Davis and Maine commercial, he can't understand why they didn't like it after it got them so many calls. He goes behind their backs, but he thinks of how it brought positive results, not realizing that it was in the small context of his department on a specific case. He thinks specifically about himself and his role at the firm, completely disregarding his boss and the firm's reputation. In chicanery, Jimmy does what he does to prevent his permanent disbarment. But when Rebecca finds Jimmy and gives him the opportunity to make things right and help his brother, Jimmy instead denounces Chuck, securing his belief that whatever happens adjacent to his scam isn't his fault. Here, Chuck is reflecting on how Jimmy's destructive and irresponsible nature often has unintended consequences. Jimmy rolls the dice, and the people around him have to deal with the repercussions, which, in the context of their feud, is the death of Chuck. Jimmy's reaction to his brother's death is another example of this. When he first arrives at Chuck's burnt-down house, he immediately comes to the conclusion that something made him relapse. He specifically notes that the last time he saw him, he looked well, which was when Jimmy went to make amends with him. For days, Jimmy's main characteristic is absent, with him barely talking, until Howard expresses his belief that Chuck being pushed out of HHM because of his insurance is what made him commit suicide. Jimmy knows that something made Chuck relapse, and at first, he thinks it was his own genuine expression of emotion from when he went to apologize to him, which is one of the few rare moments of sincerity from Jimmy. During this time that this is his operating theory, he acts in a way that we never see in the rest of the show. Jimmy is silent, remorseful, and melancholy, the complete opposite of his usual bubbly and persuasive personality. But when he finds out that it might have just been as a result of him purposely screwing him over with his insurance, he's relieved of any and all grieving. From being so introspective that you can barely speak to acting as if nothing has happened in seconds. Now, I view this partially as Jimmy letting someone else take the blame, but him also identifying that his brother killing himself was just an effect of one of his scams, which in his mind clears him of all wrongdoing.
The winner takes it all.
At the time of releasing this video, we're hours away from the premiere of season 6. Now, there's so many different questions that people are hoping to have answered in these 13 episodes. But I think one of the most important, although less obvious conclusions, will be if Jimmy ever accepts his role in his brother's death, and what role that plays in him returning to Jimmy McGill. His disregard for what he did to his brother is what finally allows him to become Saul Goodman. Now that he's coming out of his Gene Takovic identity and embracing Saul, will he come to terms with how he's gone off the deep end and return to being Jimmy McGill? Will he finally acknowledge that his brother is dead largely because of him instead of putting it on others? We've been shown Kim's pity for him repressing his emotions about his brother. First, when she cries after he dismisses Chuck's letter, and again when she realizes that he hasn't actually processed his death and was just using it to get his law license back. If he's to possibly reunite with her after the events of Breaking Bad, what role could the late arrival of him finally taking responsibility play? I'm really excited to find out. So that's my breakdown of The Winner Takes It All as it relates to Better Call Saul. If you're interested, I made 2 videos similar to this about Breaking Bad, which are both linked right here. This has been the song that parallels Jimmy and Chuck's relationship in Better Call Saul. I'll be back, hopefully sooner than last time, with another video.